Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me today is our special guest, Will Lester. You may remember him from last season. We had him on the show a few times. As a Lions fan, we figured it would be a nice little touch to the preview this week to sort of get his perspective on the Lions season thus far. At 3-3, Will Lester, let me ask you so far, how has the team looked as far as your expectations and the rest of the fans' expectations so far?
Well, no one had us going anywhere this year. Everyone said third or fourth in the division, and when we started out, we caught attention, started to get national attention, and then the team that everyone thought they were going to see is the team that showed up the last few weeks. So I'm almost unsure of what to think of this team yet because I'm not sure which one is more real. The one I've seen the first 4 weeks when we played as a complete team, or the one we've seen the last 2 weeks where they look like a completely confused team with no talent. So
where do you think it starts from the last 2 weeks? Is it coaching? Is it the offense not producing, the defense not coming up with key plays?
Well, I think the key on defense that we've been missing is turnovers, and we saw it in Carolina. They didn't force any, and Carolina brought it to them. And then last week, New Orleans started to pile it on them, and then we got turnovers, and all of a sudden we had a little comeback going. Didn't come out with it, but turnovers are key for the defense. And as far as offense, we got to stop being a little bit predictable on play calling, and we got to protect Matt Stafford a lot better. He's getting dinged up, and we could see it last week, so it's kind of an all-around thing. Everyone's just got to perform a little better. I feel like we let the attention get to us a lot after the first few weeks, after the whole Atlanta thing. So I feel like we could be better than we have been, but we'll have to see. This is a big week for Detroit, coming out of a bye, playing against a team that's always getting attention on the national stage and is a good team, and it's in prime time. So this is a big week for Detroit going into Green Bay next week.
So with the recent struggles you mentioned, it might be kind of tough to tell, especially now that the bye week seemed to be well placed for them. Do you think this team is more of the one you've seen recently, or is it the one that you think you saw early on in the season?
I think we're going to see a little bit more of the team we saw in the first 4 weeks against Pittsburgh. It's going to come down to just how well rested this team is, and if Matt Stafford can get back to the Matt Stafford that we signed in the offseason. He's looked a little bland the last few weeks, and of course he got hurt a little bit, and he had a lot of turnovers last week. And I think it's going to start with him and the leadership he brings to that offense. If he takes control and gets this offense some firepower and some energy, and then maybe that can turn into some more offensive points scored. And when our offense is doing good, the fire for the defense is there, and we start forcing turnovers. So I think what team we look like is going to depend on what Matt Stafford we get on Sunday night.
You mentioned some of the play calling, just part of what the Lions' offense has been over the past few years. It seems like they've gone a very heavy, passing attack. It seems like every year Matt Stafford leads the league in passing attempts. Has the running game been okay this year? Because I know, as you very well know, the Lions haven't had a 100-yard rusher since Reggie Bush in 2013. They came really close a few weeks ago, so the offense might be doing a little better running the ball. But how's the running game been to help him out this year?
Well, it helps when they don't know when we're running the ball. I feel like our offensive coordinator made a great call in saying he's got to commit to the run way more often than he was last year. And he's done a good job of trying to do that, but he's become predictable in the points in which he's trying to do that. Anyone can say that they're going to turn around and rush the ball more, but if every team can turn around and realize, okay, they want to run the ball more and they're definitely going to do it on this play and they're right every time, then it's hard to get a run game going consistently unless you're semi-unpredictable with when you're running. Because the whole point of having the two dynamic sides of offense with the passing and the running and trying to mix it in is to become unpredictable so that both sides can play a little bit more freely and play within a little bit more of their game. But when teams can say, well, this is where they pass all the time or this is where they run just because they're trying to do it too hard or they're overthinking it, then it becomes predictable, and then everything stalls, and I think that's what you've seen with the Lions. They got to become a little bit less predictable, and I think when they do that, they will have a 100-yard rushing game. I mean, that game against Minnesota, we had 94. Abdullah looked a little dinged up on the last play, and they never went back to him. They tried too hard to throw the ball, and, we never seen the extra 6 yards, I think it was, that we needed to. So we've been right there, but and if you really think about it, between Abdullah having 80, 90 yards some weeks. If you factor in that we are a dual running back system. We use Abdullah a lot, but we also are using Theo Riddick a lot as well. We've been giving him touches. Zach Zenner gets touches. So between all these guys getting touches in the backfield, we've had 100-yard rushing days. It's just a matter of getting 100-yard rushers. So I think we'll get there. It's gonna come with a little bit more aggressive play calling and a little bit less, okay, we need to run the ball to boost our numbers and doing it every time on first down or third and short or whatever it is. So we'll get there.
On the other side of the ball, the defense maybe carried this team in the very early portion of the season at times. Statistically, they haven't been a great unit, but has it been more about the opportunistic play with all the turnovers? They're averaging just under 2.5 turnovers a game, which the last two teams to do that through a full season made the Super Bowl, and the Panthers 2 years ago, and 4 years ago was the Seahawks who won the Super Bowl.
That's a fun analogy to think about for my team. You don't hear Super Bowl comparisons too much. But, yeah, this is a team, first few weeks, really, this defense really, really carried this team. And we've seen it in Arizona. We've seen it in Minnesota. This defense was the lifeblood of all those wins we had. And it starts with turning the ball over. We had a chance against Atlanta, and that was because down the stretch we managed to get the ball from Matt Ryan 3 times. It stems from that, and then as soon as you've seen that go away in Carolina, a team in Carolina that we should have, in my opinion, easily beat, brought it to us, and their tight end game was off the hook. So this defense can be a great defense. We don't have a ton of superstars, but the guys that we do have produce, and we have depth on the line, and we're starting to see a little bit of leadership out of our rookie linebacker in Gerard Davis. And when he's back there, you can tell he brings an energy to the team that past linebackers or past players just haven't really brought. It felt like a defense without a whole lot of lifeblood in it. So now that they got him in there and the cornerbacks are playing at a good level right now, we got a good defense, and it's going to come from turnovers. And I think the hardest part for this defense this week is where they're going to find those turnovers from.
Interesting that you mentioned that. It's well documented in Pittsburgh that Ben Roethlisberger's numbers on the road have not been nearly as good as they are at home. But I think all that being said, I think you and I both know that the Steelers intend on going to Le'Veon Bell a ton early and often. Funny that you mentioned Gerard Davis. He was one of my favorite prospects coming out of the NFL draft. Yes, he's coming off a concussion, as you mentioned earlier, but how does he match up, and how do the other linebackers match up with Le'Veon Bell? They're obviously going to have to stack the box if they want to stop him, and if they do, I think that might give them a chance to maybe intercept Ben Roethlisberger a few times. What do you think about that?
Well, that's the hope. Gerard Davis, he's got some inconsistencies as far as covering, so I think for Pittsburgh to get the run game going would really open it up for them. But Gerard Davis with the leadership, and he knows he's a great guy. He runs really. He's a quick linebacker, which is something that the Lions haven't had for a while. He's a great pursuit guy, and he'll make the tackle. He doesn't miss tackles like any other guy I've seen on the team miss tackles. So if he's in on the play, we have a shot to really make a stop. So for Pittsburgh, if they can get the run game going on that linebacking core, I feel like Detroit's hopes are pretty slow for getting any kind of stops on that offense, because if they can get the run game going, Ben Roethlisberger takes a load off, and he'll make you pay. So I'm hoping that the defensive coordinator doesn't play it safe early on in the game, and they really commit to making sure Le'Veon Bell doesn't burn them. I think putting the ball in Ben Roethlisberger's hands should be our approach, and then just hoping he makes mistakes on the road, which you just said he does fairly often for this team. So I hope that's the game plan going into the game, and that should be the game plan. What they do is shaky, because we've seen it a lot of different ways. They like to just kind of like play it safe and play some coverage. We don't call too many blitzes, but I think even with Haloti Ngata not in the lineup right now, you got some guys dinged up. I'm really hoping that they cut the linebackers loose on this one and really give them an opportunity to try and defend them with the corners rather than trying to stop Le'Veon Bell with the linebackers, and I think that's going to be the approach.
One of those cornerbacks is Darius Slay, a well-known and accomplished cornerback in the NFL. His key matchup is going to be Antonio Brown, but I think, as you know, with the Martavis Bryant news in Pittsburgh, that he will be deactivated for this game. Juju Smith-Schuster, the other Steelers receiver, currently in concussion protocol. That means the Steelers could potentially have a trio of Eli Rogers, Justin Hunter, and Antonio Brown as their top receivers. And I'm sure that's something that you'd probably be licking your chops at if you're a Lions fan, especially knowing that Slay is probably going to have help over the top since you're going to have those other pretty much unproven receivers on the other side.
Yeah, I think you think about these things as a fantasy owner. I'm sure you go over this kind of thing all the time. The thing about Darius Slay is he's a good corner, but his main problem is he's undersized, especially compared to a guy like Antonio Brown who could, he can Randy Moss anybody out there on that field. So when you get an undersized guy like Darius Slay, like you said, they're going to be bringing help. So with that help coming that way, and if you're a fantasy owner, you're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster or the tight end or anybody else that they can pair up on the opposite side to try and take advantage of maybe some linebacker coverage going on out there. Darius Slay's a good corner, and he'll cover Antonio Brown about as best as he can, however much Antonio Brown can be covered, if he can. But I think the other side is where you're going to see the ball kind of gravitate a lot, because that's where the matchups are going to make or break it for the matchup of the Pittsburgh offense against the Lion defense. So I think if you're more interested in seeing the low-key matchups, I think on the other side of the ball will be Juju Smith-Schuster and Nevin Lawson. That'll be the matchup to watch to see just how much this offense can progress in the passing game.
Do you think the Lions have the advantage in that, since the Steelers would kind of be moving the next man up from Bryant to Smith-Schuster or Rogers, some guys that have never really been, a number two receiver? The Steelers really haven't had a number two receiver this season, so I would think, at least from our vantage point, that might give the Lions an advantage in that kind of a matchup.
I would say so. Nevin Lawson's been, if you ask Pro Football Focus, Nevin Lawson's been one of the better coverage cornerbacks in the game as of the recent few weeks. So putting him on Juju Smith-Schuster is about the best option the Lions have. And if Ben Roethlisberger can make anyone good, he can get the ball to anyone if he really wanted to. But I think that's advantage Lions, but I wouldn't be surprised if Steelers pulled a fast one and started to win that matchup by the time the night was over, because you are playing against a young quarterback in Lawson, and as soon as they feel like he's tiring out or his head's not in the game, they're going to put in other guys, and other guys are undersized. So it'll be interesting. I think we're going to see more of a platooning than you're expecting on the opposite side of Antonio Brown. So the Lions should have that one in control, but with the Lions, you just never know anymore. It's hard to tell what team you're going to get.
All right, just before we wrap things up, had a little time to digest everything going on with the game. Give me one bold prediction for, it could be anything. It could be one for the Lions, one for the Steelers, and then a final score prediction if you can just come up with one off the top of your head.
Well, I think this one will be close. This team's fired up. They want to win, and they're in Motown, and the fans in Motown, they get pretty loud in that stadium. My bold prediction is that the Lions break that ugly streak of non-100-yard rushers. I think if with 2 to 3 weeks of getting healthy for Amir Abdullah and for Matt Stafford to get healthy, all these guys have got time to get healthy. Everyone's going to be cued in on Golden Tate if he plays, or Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay on the other side. I think Matt Stafford takes control of the passing game. That'll open things up for the run game, and I think in Motown, Amir Abdullah is motivated enough to finally get us that 100-yard day we've been wanting out of him for a while, and I think this one's going to play close, and my heart says the Lions are going to pull the fast one on Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's on the road, but Pittsburgh is easily a better team, so my head's telling me I think Pittsburgh's going to win this one in a close matchup. It's going to come down to the last few drives, as it always does with Detroit, it seems. But I think Lions fall short by about 6 points in this one.
Okay. Just one last thing. Obviously, the Aaron Rodgers injury was pretty huge for the rest of the NFC North. Even if the Lions lose here, fall to 3-4, assuming Aaron Rodgers does miss the rest of the season, how do you feel about potentially being able to pick up the NFC North crown?
Well, it starts with next week. We got Green Bay on Monday night next week, and that's one in Green Bay, I believe, and that's one we got to get. The hardest game for the Lions every year is always that game at Lambeau, and I feel like us getting that game out of the way earlier in the season is a blessing in disguise. We don't want to be looking at Lambeau Field late in the year when it's freezing cold out there. So if we fall to 3-4, I would say maybe not hit the panic button, but be on high alert as to say, whoa, like 3-4, this is gonna be tough to come back from, because you have to think in the NFC you're gonna need about 10 wins to move on. So that if to go 3-4, you're calling to try and go 7-2 the rest of the way, and that's not easy. So I feel like this is a big week for Detroit, and if they don't get the win, it's not on the panic button. But if you go into the Green Bay and you can't get it done in Green Bay, then you're definitely extremely concerned about your playoff hopes, or especially the division crown. I think to get a win these next 2 weeks would be something that no one saw coming into the year, and would kind of catapult us into the driver's seat to try and finally get a division crown. And with Aaron Rodgers out, it definitely opens up the opportunity for it. But the Vikings are no slouch, and the Bears are sneaky good, and they could sneak a win on you here or there. So you got to keep your eyes close to your division teams, but it starts with this week, and that's been Jim Caldwell's mantra for this team all year long: is one game at a time, and we can get to where we deserve to be. So Lions, I know they're thinking Aaron Rodgers being out, they can get it done, but they need to focus on Pittsburgh, and if they can get Pittsburgh, then I think that'll open some eyes to what we can do in this division.
One game at a time approach, but you are right. The time to strike is now. Will Lester, as always, thank you for joining me. Appreciate your analysis. Why don't you quickly tell the fans how they can follow you on Twitter for your patented Lions coverage, if you want.
Patented Lions coverage? Well, if I remember correctly, my Twitter handle is @WillLester94. You can follow me on there. I can't promise play-by-play, but you'll get some emotional reactions to things going on in the game, and I'm sure I'll be here with John, so you'll not only see the play-by-play from him, but you'll hear some emotional reactions from me. So if you're a random Lions fan out there listening, go ahead and give me a follow, and I'm sure you'll enjoy my lovely, colorful tweets about my Detroit Lions.
And as you know, he knows more about his team than we obviously know about his team. So if you have questions that he might be able to answer, I'm sure he's well more equipped than we are.
Or so I hope.
In any case, thanks for listening in today. Be sure to check out the show on Twitter @Stronger_Steel. And Will, thanks again for joining me today. It's a pleasure. Good luck to the Lions on Sunday.
Have fun. It should be fun.